All right, let's power ahead then. Welcome everyone to this Data Lab series workshop, visualizing data with Tableau. So if you would like to follow along in Tableau as I'm going through some of these demonstrations, you can download Tableau Public and the sample data I'll be working with. You can follow this link, or once you log on your computers, you can Google Tableau Public, create an account, and then also Google Tableau sample data, go to the Superstore data and download that. This workshop is presented by Data Services, which is a department of the WashU University Libraries. We offer 6 core services, which you can see on my screen. You can schedule appointments or consults through our website, which you can see below the picture, or drop in via Zoom or in person during our help desk hours. You can schedule appointments also on our website. I'm Zachary Shpaniak, a data curator and the GIS librarian. Don't let the librarian in the title fool you. My degrees are in geoscience and geography, and I have nearly a decade's worth of experience creating and working with maps, charts, and data for research institutes, city government, and to my shame, even a bank. This is the rest of the data services team, our fearless leader, Jennifer Moore, my fellow data curator and digital humanities expert, Sarah Swans, and fellow GIS nerd and programmer, Molly Webb. Consider this workshop an introduction to Tableau. The software is vast, nuanced, and would take more than a 2-hour workshop to gain any proficiency in. So I'm going to just introduce you to Tableau, what it does well. Show you how to connect your data to Tableau, show you how to prepare your data for visualization, show you how to actually make those data visualizations in Tableau, build charts, maps, give you a brief demo of analytics or show you that it exists in Tableau, and then show you how to export your work from Tableau for use in other software. Tableau has several other excellent features, including the ability to create interactive dashboards and stories for your audiences. However, if you're using these features with Tableau Public, which is the free version and the one available to y'all, your workbooks and dashboards cannot be saved locally. So you shouldn't use it for any sensitive data. The data will be findable, your dashboards will be findable by anyone searching through Tableau Public servers. So why use Tableau as a data visualization software? It's very buzzy in business circles, certainly. And this is because it's easier to use than, say, R or any other statistical software because it is low code. Notice I don't say no code because knowing some SQL functions and language will help, but you can certainly get by without knowing this. Another advantage is that you can connect to multiple data sources in one single workbook. You can also more quickly create better visualizations than, say, Excel. And Tableau Public is free. That is a big plus. It also has, in my nearly 10 years of working with Tableau, I found the community to be very excellent and willing to help. And the documentation is also excellent and just gets better. So if you have questions, you can find them online pretty easily, or come to data services with questions. We're happy to help. All right, so we're going to move out of the slide deck now. You will have access to the slide deck after the presentation. It's more a collection of links for the types of things we're going over. So if you open up a fresh copy of Tableau Public, the first thing it'll ask you to do is connect to a data source. With Tableau Public, the number of data sources is more limited than with the paid version, but it still covers just about everything you'll need for academic projects. You can get to Excel, you can get to text files like CSVs, you can get to a database like Microsoft Access, spatial files like shape files or GeoJSON, or you can connect directly to statistical output files. For this demo, I'm going to connect to the Superstore sample data, which is an Excel workbook. So once you connect to a data source, it brings you to the data source tab. For comparison, this is the data source opened in Excel. You'll see it has 3 worksheets. And you'll see Tableau has interpreted that it has 3 worksheets. It will reinterpret them as separate tables. So to actually work with this data in Tableau, you just drag and drop in the table you want to work with. Here, orders is the bulk of our data. You can, and again, like I said, an advantage is you can pull in multiple data sources. So I could pull in the other sheets, but because it's interpreting it as a table, if I want these to connect to each other, I'll need to establish a join. If any of you are familiar with database joins, you find a common ID field and it will link up the data. You can also keep them separately, but the advantage is having them joined. For ease of use, though, I'm going to keep a single table in here. Tableau can hold a lot of data. This orders worksheet holds nearly 10,000 rows, and it loads it up and sifts through it pretty easily. You'll see in the bottom half of the screen, it's giving us not just a preview, but an entire view of the data set on the right-hand side. We can go through and see everything in it. On the left-hand side, it is just the field names. So it doesn't contain the data, just the column names. So a good rule of thumb when you are, where's the data set? The data set, if you Google Tableau sample data, it is the Superstore data set, which should be one of the first options that comes up on the Tableau sample data website. So a good rule of thumb is to look through the data, your columns, and make sure Tableau has correctly interpreted your data. So Tableau recognizes 7 broad data types. And if you click on this little icon above the row, you can see these types that it's interpreting. So numbers, whether decimal or whole, can be manipulated mathematically, so summed, averaged, and calculated. Dates are temporal data. String data is categorical text or characters. So if we look here at order ID, this a little ABC means it's interpreting it as a string field. And that's correct, because despite there being numbers in the field, there are letters and characters. So it's a string. Cannot manipulate it mathematically. It's good to look over any date fields you have, because Tableau and Excel have a tendency to miscommunicate them as number fields by accident. So, but we see here it's correctly interpreted it as a date, that little calendar icon. The other types of fields you may have are Boolean, which is true-false logical data, or geographic role. And that's used to define your data as latitude and longitude for point data, or a variety of other preset polygons here, like cities or counties. Yes, that is the correct data set. I'm going to scroll over because we have some examples of geographic data here, country and city. It's interpreting that as geographic, and that is correct. Postal code, also geographic. And we've got number fields on the right-hand side. So if you don't want to preview your data, you can do everything over here, also on this screen, or on the left-hand side. You also can rename your field names. So maybe I don't want this to be called row ID. Maybe I want it to be called row ID one word, just as a facetious example. Any changes, an important note, any changes you make in Tableau will not reflect back on the original data source. So I changed the field name in Tableau to row ID one word, but back on the original data source, it is still row ID two words. This is a live connection though, so any changes I make in the original data source will be updated to reflect in the Tableau data source. So that could break your data if you're not careful, break your worksheets if you're not careful, but it's also means you don't have to consciously re-upload data every time you make a change. If you have a live connection, any updates to your original data source, any updates to the Superstore data here will be reflected in Tableau. All right, so this looks good. Data looks good. You'll notice here on the left-hand side that sheet one is now orange. So this is the worksheet. It's the workhorse of your analysis. This is where you'll be preparing your data visualization. If you look over on the left-hand side, this is the data table pane. And you can see right here that we are pulling tables from our data source orders from Superstore. And each of these is a field in that table. So something that can be confusing, you notice there's a small gray line here. Everything above the line is coded as a measure. Everything below the line is coded as a value. Simpler way to think of that is measures are the quantitative data, so the data that can be categorized, while the values are the qualitative data, the data that can be measured. Yes, you had a question?
Yes, in the previous page, the data source, I think you were linking two sheets together. What does that mean when you do that?
So relating two sheets together is joining them on a common field. So it's more often used in databases. So if you are searching through a database that has multiple tables and a common key to join them, you relate them on that field. So returns here is related on order ID. So this order ID field is the same as order ID here in orders. So it's a way of getting more fields onto your data source.
So you've merged orders and returns based on order ID.
Yeah.
Okay.
So top is, again, the measures, the qualitative data, your categories, and below is your quantitative data here in green, the data that is can be measured and calculated. So this is important because the combination of measures and values we put into our rows and columns will determine what type of visualizations Tableau throws at us. So let's get into the details of making different data visualizations for the purpose of exploring the data. Tableau is fantastic at data exploration. It is really easy to play around with data and look at it in different ways. If you make a mistake, easy to just undo or to duplicate your work into different sheets to try different things. So Tableau encourages experimentation. So again, this is exploratory data visualization. I'm more interested in this point in looking for interesting patterns to build on later than making anything pretty. So I'm a spatial person. I like to see maps first when spatial data is available. So let's say I wasn't sure how to make a map on here. I would go to this Show Me tab, and it has displayed grayed out currently a sampling of the different type of visualizations that Tableau can create. And as I hover over each one, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, it will say what type of map it is. So this one is tree map, and it will say to make this requires one or more dimension or one or two measures. I'm interested in this map, so I need at least one geographic measure or one geographic dimension and one other measure. So I'm going to pull in longitude into columns, latitude into rows. See, it's just drag and drop, which is fantastic. And it's already recognized that this is a map. It doesn't know, though, what I'm trying to map. So I have to decide what level of detail I'm going to go into. We can choose in this data set, we have geographic data for city, country, state. Let's start with the biggest level and drag in country. I'm going to drag that into the detail mark over here. So I could drag it into any of these, but to make a map, I'm dragging it into detail. And I want to look at which states maybe are, or what countries are more profitable for this country. So I'm going to click and drag onto profit. I'm going to pull it into color. Well, that's not particularly useful. It is one country. So that is a rather useless map. Let's instead take a look at states. So just drag and drop. I'm going to replace country with state. Okay, now I'm seeing some differences in profit. A legend has already popped up telling me that orange is less profitable, blue is more profitable. Tableau is very interactive, so just mousing over these will give me more information, a hover menu. I could take a look at cities. All right. So I can see at a glance here that because most of the cities are grayed out, or gray, they're falling in this median color category. This particular map is not very useful for analysis. Perhaps if I, instead of color, chose size as a way to show the differences in the data. So I'm going to drag profit over the size. Okay, that's better. I could maybe even combine size and color. And by clicking on any of these marks, I can edit. So here I can edit color and change the color scheme. I go to size, I can change the relative size of what's being displayed. So, while this still isn't great, I can see that some of these major cities have good profit. But I did these all with a few clicks. I didn't need to code any different parameters. I just moved some sliders around and dragged different things in different places. We do, however, need to keep in mind that everything in Tableau is aggregated up to the largest level unless you're implementing specific filters. So right now, what I'm seeing is the aggregated profit by state for all years of data collected and all customers. So there's no filters on this at all. This is just everything at once, which could be useful for some folks, but maybe I'm interested in seeing it divided out by date. So looking at the tables, I see that we have one date field, order date, and another field, ship date, 2 date fields. There are a few ways I could go about seeing which one I should use. I could look at the original data. So I could pull up what I have here and scroll through the differences. I could take a look here in Tableau. This little icon here will pull up the same type of view. This is all my data. Or I could create a quick little table to see what the differences between the two are. Again, if this was actually my data, I wouldn't have to investigate this. I would know the difference between the two dates. But because I'm working with unfamiliar data, I don't want to be surprised by, I don't know, a year's difference between order date and ship date. No, that doesn't make logical sense, but data can do, people can do weird things with data. So just to double check, I'm going to go over down at the very bottom and create a new worksheet. Oh, you can rename these, which is great for keeping track what in the world you are doing. So I'm going to call this one map. I'm going to call this one date diff because I want to know the difference between these two dates. Yes.
So to work with the global map, you would need to import all longitude and latitude coordinates. Is that correct?
Yes. And everything should be imported like in your original data set. If you have it by default, Tableau will eat up the entire data set unless you put filters on it to say no, only eat up certain things. So if you, yeah.
If I have a data set with, let's say, 10 countries and
Mhm.
I drag that to this visualization, will it give me like this global map that you were working with, or do I also have to do the longitude and latitude?
If it is, so there are some predefined geographic roles, and countries are one of them. So providing you have the spelling correct, it will identify it as a country and show all the countries that you have. So I've only got one country, but if you had more would show up.
But it would only show the countries that, like, if I have 9 countries, it would only show me, like, I guess, what that country nationally looks like this silhouette.
Yes.
Okay, but not the entire world.
It would put it it would show you the entire world map.
With those countries filled in.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are options for changing things on the background maps as well. Like right now, it's just a grade map, but I could change it to a satellite map, street networks, dark view. So there are a few different options. You can also bring in maps from other places. Its mapping capabilities have gotten much stronger than they were at launch. So back to determining our date difference, I'm going to bring in row ID as my smallest form of aggregation. In the original data set, each row had one row ID. And then I'm going to add row ID and ship date. Sorry, order ID. No. Order date and ship date. That's what I wanted to say. Order date and ship date. So when working with dates, you'll see it automatically brings this up to the year level. I know from looking at the data set that I could go down to an exact date. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to right click on year. A question from the audience here.
Why do I change to the different shade? I didn't show the column as the data because then I have the dashboard and the layouts.
Oh, okay. So you brought up easy mistake. You put in a new dashboard when you wanted to create a new worksheet. So, yeah. From the audience, we had a question on he couldn't find the right objects to put in. He had accidentally opened up a dashboard instead of a worksheet. Dashboards are a really interesting part of Tableau that goes beyond the limits of this particular workshop. But so I was interested in the date. I know I can get exact dates, so I'm going to go ahead and click exact date. And you have to wait for it to calculate a bit. Because it's a live connection, it goes a little slower. And we're going to do the same with ship date. And while we wait for it to calculate, you'll notice that our visualization changed. I had a table and now it is trying to make a bar graph out of it. And that is because if you look at the top, our colors changed because we're looking at an exact date. Tableau interpreted that, reinterpreted a measure value, a category, as a value, as a as quantitative data. And I don't want that. I want it to stay as a category. So I'm going to go back here and shift it to discrete. Again, I have to wait, but I'm going to need to do that to both pills here. All right, so that's what I wanted to see. Something that looks a little like the Excel spreadsheet with just two columns attached. So I could eyeball this. We want order date to go first. You can easily change the order of what's in here by simply grabbing a pill and shuffling it around. So logically, someone orders something before it ships, so I probably want order date first. 8 days to 11. Okay, so just a few days difference when I'm eyeballing it. But that's only the first 30 or so rows. I don't want to be surprised later. So I am going to, I want to find the exact number of days. I want to display it in this field here as a value. And this requires making something called a calculated field in Tableau, which is where you can take the data you imported and create new fields, new columns with it in Tableau only. So again, this won't affect your original data source. So I'm right-clicking over here in the table pane, and the top option is create calculated field. I'm going to call it date diff because that's what I'm doing. And find the difference in dates. I probably want to take the ship date and subtract from it the order date. And I'm just dragging stuff in to create an equation. If you have familiarity with SQL, standard query language in databases, it uses a very similar format to that in creating your calculations. If you click on this little menu button here, Tableau will bring up a list of all the functions it uses that you can include in your calculations. So having a knowledge of SQL and SQL and how to create functions helps when doing these calculated fields, but it is not a necessity. I will have included links to learn how to make calculated fields, and goes into more detail on these in the PowerPoint that I will be either sending to you all or will be linked to the recording of this video. Down at the bottom, I can see that this calculation is valid. Tableau does a check on it. So what I'm saying basically is for every row in the table, I want Tableau to calculate to subtract order date from the ship date. And I see date diff here. It has a little calculated field symbol on it. I can drag it. And because this is a table, oh, I've never tried this. Hold up. Aha! I can just pull it straight into the open column here for values. What I'm used to doing is I'll just grab it and I instead pull it into the text markup field here. But as you can see, there's multiple ways to do anything in Tableau. So what I'm seeing here now on the right is the exact number of days between the order and ship date. I can do now a quick sort. So up here at the top, I can sort by descending. And that shows me there's no value greater than 7 in this entire data set. So these are pretty close together. I don't think it matters which, my question has been answered. It doesn't really matter which date field I go with. They're within 7 days of each other. I liked the thematic map of states. So I'm going to go back and stick that in here. It's doing. There we go. Okay, that's what I wanted. I wanted to visualize the difference in color of profit, not that each state is different. So to see dates, now I'm going to use the order date, and I'm going to drag that into filters. And here I can choose how I want to filter it. We're going to go with years for this. And it will immediately bring up a checkbox where I could pick which year I wanted to go with. I'm going to keep it as it looks now and say all years. So nothing changed because I was originally showing all years. I'm still showing all years. If I wanted to go through this quickly though, I could go right click, edit filter and say, okay, I just want to see 2014. Okay, that's interesting. Texas, real big profit decline. What if I want to see 2014 and 16 for whatever reason? Now it aggregated those two together. Okay, not really useful, but it's also really tiring. Have to right click this each time. It's not really intuitive. So I'm going to right click on it and say, oh, it's not showing up here. Show filter. And that brings up what Tableau calls a quick filter. And pressing this little down drop button will let you, of course, edit even that filter because you can edit just about anything in Tableau. So I could change this to radio buttons. And now I can very quickly evaluate the differences in years. Because this is time value, it might make more sense to make this a slider to emphasize that time moves linearly or not, as we can backspace. But in the end, a map is really not the best way to see any type of temporal data. When we're looking for trends over time, a map is not ideal. It's good for showing spatial differences. Well, because this is Tableau, we can switch visualizations pretty quickly. We will want to do a line graph because line graphs are some of the best charts for showing trends over time. So there's a few ways now you can go about creating a new worksheet. You could do as we did before and simply open up a new one. Or if you wanted to, for whatever reason, keep some of these settings, you could duplicate your previous worksheet and then make edits from there. That's most valuable if you've already made changes like color and like maybe label differences you want to keep going into another visualization. Making a duplicate will keep those settings. Making a new worksheet will not keep those settings. I want to create a line graph. And we'll use the duplicate example. So you can see a difference. If I go to the Show Me tab on the top right, some of these are no longer grayed out. So I could switch these quickly to different visualizations. But the one I want, line graph, is not selectable because I don't have the correct items within my columns and rows. I need a date field. I don't have a date field. If I pull in a date field, I'm already, it again defaults to year. Here's an idea. Again, multiple ways of doing things. I'm kind of playing around with a different idea of how to do this. So I could, so actually here with the map, we did all this stuff with the filters. But if you go ahead and stick year in there, you can see all your maps at once when all is selected. Because a date field is here, it will let me change this to a line. So I'm going to try. All right, changed it to a line. I'm seeing each state, its profits over time from 2014 to 2017. But maybe I want to see everything all at once. That's actually a terrible advice if you're going to show the line graph to someone else. But for your own analysis, if you want to see everything at once to see if any outliers pop up, we're going to pull state from rows into color. And now we see every single state in one line graph differentiated by color. If I click on a state in the legend, it will highlight it and de-emphasize the non-important states for your selection. The same thing happens if you click on a state on a line in your graph. Maybe I want a more granular view than year. So I could change this to, well, we can go ahead and change it to exact date. So these are the day-by-day variances of profit within each state. So that's the line graph. Let's look at the scatter plot, which many of you may be familiar with from statistical software, where a map is good at showing spatial information and a line graph is good at showing information over time and trends. A scatter plot is great at showing, comparing two numerical values and looking for a correlation between them. So before I move off this, I'm going to rename this line. Go to my new sheet. I need 2, and to confirm for scatter plot, I need 2 to 4 measures. Dimensions don't matter. So to display it, I don't need to look first here. I'm looking first in the lower, the qualitative data, the numbers, rather than categories. So maybe I want to see how profit relates to the number of sales. Yeah.
We always put the, we always put the dimension on the rows or on the column.
Yeah, so the question was whether to show the information, we need to move values for these columns into the columns or rows section. And yes, to show data, you do need to drag it over there or right click and add to sheet. This is telling the software what to display. So overall, because again, the default here is no filters whatsoever. Across all the data, this is not very useful. We would like to see maybe, we've done a lot with geography. Let's see the categories. So I'm going to grab subcategory here, which I know from looking at the data is the type of product. I'm going to pull it into color. And it will pull up a scatter plot for us now. So going over here, higher profit and higher sales over in this corner, lower profit, lower sales over in this corner. If I'm looking at it and I think, oh, that's not right, that doesn't look right. Sales should be at the bottom and profit should be on the side. Over here by sort, on the top menu, I can switch X and Y axes. We could also do, just to show quickly, it's pretty easy then to convert what we have there to a bar graph, if that's better for looking for trends. So for here, it's actually easier to see the negative values versus the positive values. I did want to show a brief demo of some of the analysis tools that Tableau has, and a scatter plot is a good way to show that. So we can fit a trend line to this data. And that's, so over here on the left-hand side of your screen, we have data. We can skip over to analytics and it will show some of the basic analytic tools we have available. I'd like to fit a trend line. And here I can choose the type of trend line if those mean something to your analysis. I'm gonna go with linear. By hovering over it, it displays the R squared and P values. So in statistics, higher the R squared value, the better the data fits to the line, to the trend. 1 is really good, 0 is not. So we can see here 0.17. There is a positive correlation between these two things, but it's not particularly strong. So you can do some quick analysis that way. And you can also pull in numerous other ways of analyzing the data. But let's see. But as this is a basic introduction, we won't go into too much more detail. There are links I've included if you want to go into that particular aspect of the data visualization, data analysis, but we'll go over that much more here. So let's say one of these visualizations we've looked at, we want to show this to people. It looks good. We want it in our reports. So now we need to switch over from exploratory data visualization, so looking for patterns, to explanatory data visualization, which is we've found a pattern. Now we want to make sure other people see that pattern, not everything else we've already looked for. So if you've taken any of the earlier data lab courses, you've probably gotten a crash course in some of this, so I won't go over each aspect of making a good data visualization to show to others. We'll just go over in practice what that might look like. So usually you want a baseline to start at 0. Tableau will automatically change baselines to whatever the data is. So you do need to be careful of that. For this, because we have negative data, it's okay that we're not starting at 0. We want to show that there is negative data. But if we wanted to change that, we would right-click on the axis, edit axis, and we could change what we need. Right now it's automatic. We can change it to fixed, and we can change how this thing starts. So if we wanted to be deceitful, which you're not going to be, we could say, oh, there's no negative data here. It starts at 0. It automatically adjusts. But we're not doing that. That's just an example. In data visualization, you want to make sure that your labels are descriptive, because a person may not have access to a caption or the rest of an article. So you want to make sure they can get the information they need from just this chart. So by double clicking or right clicking on the sheet title, we can change that. What's a descriptive version of this? Correlation of profit and sales for all years. It's still not great, but better than nothing. Profit for every state. Sales for all years. Come on, zoom. There we go. Maybe we want, or well, another thing is to de-emphasize lines that aren't useful. Tableau already does a pretty good job compared to, say, Excel in de-emphasizing axes lines. Excel will often put really heavy X and Y axes lines. Here they're barely visible, but we can see the grid lines. In most cases, you don't actually need grid lines. So to get rid of those here, we'll go to Format and Lines, and we can take them right out. Could de-emphasize them even further by making them lighter or lower transparency, but I'm just going to take them right out so we focus on the data. Our biggest line here is the trend line, because this is correlation. This is what we want to emphasize in this particular visualization. You'll notice that this isn't labeled with the R squared. So if that was something I wanted to show, I could right click somewhere on it, somewhere next to it, and say annotate point. And I can now put in my own custom label. And edit it to what I want, which is to have no shading, so it's not distracting. I don't like the box. And for that matter, I don't care for the line. I just want a label. There we go. So you can also label, I could label each of these marks here. So I can drag subcategory into label. This gets pretty busy. It's actually a poor data visualization here when everything is labeled. Instead, you want to label the items that are most of interest to your story. So in this case, maybe that's some of the largest and smallest values. So I could click on label and I could say, I only want some min-max values to be displayed. If you're comfortable with calculated fields, you can also create a calculated field to say only display certain values. So I can show that real quick. So this will use logical statements. So I want to say if subcategory equals phones, then display phones. I want to keep carrying on this list to show certain items. So phones, maybe I want to show tables too. I would say else if subcategory then tables. So the second part, so this first part is saying if we're looking through the row and subcategory says phones, display phones. I could change this. I could say cell phones in all caps just for the purposes of demonstration. Because this is an if or statement, it has to end with end. And that's when it'll say your calculation is valid. If I had forgotten that, Tableau would tell me, oh, they expected an end to match. And it wouldn't let me proceed. This is my new label field. I'm going to drag it into the text label. Because I have trend lines up, it's doing some weird things. So I'm going to find trend lines here, edit trend lines. Don't want it to show subcategory, so I'll pull that out. But you see here, cell phones, and it's saying it exactly how I told it to. So even though the actual category is phones, it's saying cell phones, all capital. All right, but this is what I want, because all looks good. So because we're on Tableau Public, it will not let you export anything unless you have saved this. So if I go to worksheet and export, right now it is grayed out because I am not signed in for this worksheet. So you need to, and it's not saved as well. So you have to save this to Tableau Public first. So as I mentioned earlier, this is, as the name might suggest, all public. Anyone can look for your data. So if you have any sensitive stuff, don't use Tableau Public. We'll save everything, not just the worksheets in question. And it'll quickly show a preview of what it looks like online. Buddy. And it now should be ready for export, though it is still grayed out here. And so I'm not sure what the issue is. I'm checking at the moment, but can't have a presentation without something going wrong. So while I look for that, since this is the last part of the presentation, does anyone have any questions?